Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a time where survival wasn't just a struggle, it was a gamble. A world of mud floors, cold porridge, and the quiet hum of death rolling ever closer. You're waking up in Europe. The year is 1347, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the damp in your nose and the ache in your back. You're lying on a straw mattress packed with old hay that squeaks when you shift. Your family, parents, siblings, possibly even that weird uncle nobody talks about, shares the same one-room cottage. Its walls made of wattle and daub, mud, straw, and timber, with a thatched roof that leaks when it rains too hard. You're used to it. Everyone is. Privacy is a concept for nobles. You, on the other hand, have a designated bucket for everything and a strong sense of smell denial. You rub your eyes and stand, brushing hay off your tunic. The chill bites, but there's no fire. Last night's embers didn't hold. Your feet slap against the packed earth floor as you head to the hearth. The air is thick with the smell of smoke, sour sweat, and something you've stopped trying to identify. It's fine. Everyone smells like this. Bathing is rare, dangerous even. Doctors say warm water opens the pores and invites illness. So, you stink. And you live. Breakfast, if you're lucky, is stale bread softened in ale. Yes, ale. For everyone, including children. Why? Because water might kill you. It runs through contaminated wells, past rotting animals, and open cesspits. Better to drink something that's been boiled, fermented, and blessed by centuries of peasant pragmatism. You step outside. The village is already awake. Chickens cluck. A donkey brays like it's seen the end times. Smoke curls from nearby chimneys, and the bells from the church tower toll lazily, counting hours like no one has anywhere to be but the fields, which, to be fair, they don't. You're bound to your lord's land, either by rent, if you're lucky, or by feudal obligation, if you're not. That means tilling his fields, giving up a chunk of your harvest, and smiling when he rides by on a horse that probably eats better than you do. Still, there's rhythm here, comfort even, days marked by sun and toil, seasons by planting and harvesting. The church bell tolls each week for Mass, and the same stories roll off the priest's tongue like a lullaby you've heard 1,000 times. You're not alone in thinking this life is hard. But it's life. It's all you know. And so far, no one is talking about rats. That changes when a merchant arrives. He's an oddity, a man who smells different, probably of clove and camel sweat, with a donkey piled high with bolts of silk and mysterious jars of spices, cinnamon maybe, or powdered snake. Either way, he draws a crowd. You and the rest of the village swarm him like flies. Not for what he's selling, though your mother eyes a scrap of indigo cloth like it's the Holy Grail, but for the stories. Always the stories. He speaks of distant lands, of Alexandria, Constantinople, and Venetian ports buzzing with ships, but this time he tells of something else, something darker, a sickness. They die before their bodies hit the floor, he whispers, like he's telling a ghost story. Boils the size of apples, fever hotter than the desert sun. They bleed from the mouth, and then gone. Some villagers make the sign of the cross, Others laugh nervously and mutter about God's wrath and merchant exaggeration. You've heard worse over barley ale. Plague? Sure. There's always something killing someone. Could be this. Could be another bad harvest. Historians still argue whether these early tales were exaggerations, mistranslations, or spot-on warnings no one wanted to hear. What's certain is this: the first warning has arrived. And you go back to work, because the fields don't plow themselves, because bread doesn't bake on rumors, because it's easier to ignore the storm when all you see is clouds. You return home that evening with aching shoulders, your hands blistered around a wooden hoe handle. Your sister is boiling cabbage again. Your father snores in the corner, and your mother mutters prayers under her breath. The fire crackles. The air tastes of soot. You fall asleep quickly, surrounded by snoring and the faint whisper of the merchant's voice, replaying in your dreams. You don't know it yet, but something is coming. It's already on the ships, already in the ports, already in the rats, and it's heading your way. The next time the merchant passes through, he's different. His pack is lighter, his voice quieter. He doesn't stay long. Not to sell, not to gossip, not even to barter for your mother's winter onions, which he once called a miracle against scurvy. This time he's on the move, fast. You overhear him in the churchyard, speaking to Father Thomas in hushed tones. His eyes dart left and right, like he expects something to leap from the trees. "Venice is closed," he says. "No ships, no docks, bodies in the canals. They're piling them like timber." Father Thomas clenches his jaw, crosses himself, and tells the merchant not to spread fear. The merchant nods, but you notice he doesn't smile, and he leaves at dawn. Whispers spread quicker than the actual plague. Stories flow from one village to the next, bouncing on the backs of peddlers, priests, and travelers who speak of strange deaths in the south, of towns silenced overnight, of carts so full of bodies they creak like overloaded boats. But what can you do? You've still got work to finish. The barley's behind schedule. Your mother is knitting extra socks for winter, and your sister's got a toothache she insists is the real emergency. Life marches forward because it must, even if the road ahead is crumbling. Still, you notice changes. The market in the next town is half empty. The cobbler doesn't open his stall anymore. The apothecary, old Elric, has stopped mixing his famous cough tonic, a syrup that mostly tasted like licorice and hope. He says the herbs aren't growing right this year, but everyone suspects he's scared. You would be too if you were 60 and surrounded by coughing strangers. By early autumn, the rumors are louder. People talk openly now. The names of cities roll off tongues with unease. Messina, Genoa, Marseille. They're sealing the gates, someone says, refusing ships. But it's too late. The disease already lives in the wood of the crates, in the sacks of grain, and in the warm fur of things that scurry in the shadows. You hear of strange swellings, boils the size of goose eggs, of people who go to bed with a cough and are dead by morning. Some say it's a curse from God. Others claim it's the air, the stars, or foreign poison brought by merchants like the one you met. Historians still debate how quickly these tales spread versus how fast the plague moved itself. Some believe fear arrived weeks ahead of infection. Others suggest it was already among the people long before anyone gave it a name. Either way, by the end of the season, fear is a villager too, uninvited, unrelenting, whispering from every corner. One morning, your neighbor Marta refuses to milk her cow. She just sits by the well, rocking back and forth. "I saw a crow," she says, "sitting on the roof. 3 days now. It hasn't moved. That's a death sign." You want to laugh, just a little, but her face stops you. She believes it, and maybe deep down, so do you. Your father starts sleeping with a pouch of rosemary tied to his belt. Your mother scatters lavender by the hearth. Your sister refuses to eat anything with garlic because she heard it opens the blood. You've never heard that before. Neither has anyone else. But logic isn't king anymore. Fear is. The priest begins adding extra prayers during Mass. More Latin, more incense, less smiling. The smell of myrrh clings to the church walls like old secrets. The statue of Saint Sebastian gets new candles daily. He's the go-to saint for plagues, you're told. You wonder if he's overwhelmed. A few brave souls still travel, still trade. One of them, a woman selling linen from the coast, is burned in a village 20 miles from yours. Someone saw black marks on her arm. She screamed that they were bruises, not plague. No one believed her. They doused her in oil. You hear this from the baker's apprentice who swears it's true, but admits he heard it third hand. Even if it's not real, it feels real. Your village elders call a meeting. It's rare to see them all together unless the alehouse burns down. They argue loudly. Should they close the roads? Turn away outsiders? Keep the harvest to themselves? The miller wants to send for a physician. The smith says the physician in the last town is already dead. No one really knows what to do. You stand at the edge of the gathering with your father. He's quiet. That means he's worried. When the meeting breaks, nothing has changed. No closures, no plans. Just more candles and more saints to pray to. That night, the wind feels colder than usual. Your dog whimpers. You think of the merchant, of the ships, of the cities with no one left to ring the bells. And you lie in bed wondering, not when it will come, but how. Will it knock, or will it creep in like fog? Will it start with a cough, a fever, a boil? You don't know. No one does. But it's closer now. You can feel it. It's winter now, not the romantic kind with sleigh bells and gently falling snow. This is the mud-coated, lung-burning, bone-chilling kind of winter where the air hurts your face and the sky hasn't shown a single patch of blue in weeks. You're used to hardship, but this feels like the cold is trying to bury you alive. And yet, you're not complaining, because something worse than frostbite has arrived. It starts with news from the next village over, only half a day's walk. At first, you hear that someone fell sick. A baker's daughter, maybe. Then 3 people. Then 8. By the next week, they say the church bell there rings so often that the bell ringer's hands have bled through the gloves. Your mother listens carefully, but she doesn't say much. Your father, who once scoffed at gossip from the coast, now sleeps with a rosary wrapped around his wrist. And you're watching the fields lie fallow, covered in frost, and wondering how you're supposed to plow them in the spring if everyone's too dead to eat the harvest. A traveling friar arrives, gaunt and glassy-eyed. He's welcomed, fed, and questioned. He tells of towns where everyone is gone, not sick, gone. Corpses in churches, dogs eating unattended bread loaves, entire households gone still and silent. You don't know whether to believe him, but the look in his eyes says enough. He's seen things that would make your nightmares look like bedtime stories. And then it happens. The first signs are subtle. A man who doesn't show up to tend the millstone. A cart abandoned on the road with its donkey still harnessed, chewing frost-bitten weeds. A woman who vomits in the middle of Sunday Mass and is carried out, shivering, lips turning gray. Within a few days, the smell arrives, sour, metallic, and thick. Your nose burns with it. It coats your throat. Even your dog won't go near the edge of the village anymore. The sick are moved to the outskirts. A house near the woods becomes the plague house. No one says it out loud, but everyone knows. The healer visits once and never returns. Later, you hear she fell ill herself. Your father attends another village meeting. This one ends faster. Doors are bolted, outsiders turned away. Trade halts. The road that once brought cloth, gossip, and cinnamon is now silent as snow. Historians still argue whether villages like yours isolated fast enough to slow the spread, or whether the effort was too little, too late. What's clear is this: everyone tries something, and none of it really works. One morning, a teenage boy is found in the woods, covered in frost, his skin flushed with fever, and strange black marks blooming beneath his arms. He'd been hiding symptoms, hoping he'd recover. He didn't. By nightfall, he's dead. And the sickness moves faster. It becomes a rhythm. Wake. Find out who's sick, who's dead, who didn't show up for chores. The church bell tolls so often you stop noticing it. Then it stops altogether. Father Thomas is dead. No one is left to ring the bell anymore. The plague doesn't care about status. The wealthy wool merchant dies in the same week as his servant. The Lord's daughter perishes despite being wrapped in velvet and prayed over by 3 priests. The chickens are eerily quiet. At night, you hear wailing. Sometimes it's from a neighbor's house. Sometimes it's from your own throat. You help dig a grave. You're first. It's for Marta's youngest. He had been so full of energy, always throwing rocks, chasing geese. His body is small, but the grief that follows is enormous. It swallows the air like smoke. The second grave is easier. Not emotionally, but physically. You're numb now. By now, your village has built a mass pit near the southern ridge. Individual burials are impossible. There aren't enough hands to dig them. You keep busy, because busy means alive. You help move firewood. You bring bread to your neighbors. You carry water with a cloth soaked in vinegar tied around your face. You don't know if it helps, but it gives the illusion of safety, and that's worth something. One evening, your mother kneels by the hearth, clutching a wooden carving of Saint Roch, the patron saint of plagues. She murmurs a prayer with her eyes closed tight. You sit beside her in silence, feeling like a child again. She opens her eyes. "You mustn't be afraid," she says, but her voice trembles. You try not to ask questions, like why the birds are gone, or why the sky looks so pale, or why your little sister hasn't spoken in days. But your body knows. This is not just sickness. This is unraveling. One morning, you wake up and the cottage is silent. The kind of silence that presses on your chest. Your sister lies still, her lips blue. You don't touch her. You already know. Your father walks out the door with his shoulders bent like he's aged 20 years in one night. Your mother wraps your sister in linen. You dig again. There's no funeral, just dirt, cold, damp, and final. That night, you hear nothing. No wind, no crying, no prayers. Just the crackle of the fire and your own heartbeat trying not to echo too loudly in the dark. You wish someone would ring the bell again, even just once. The day the mill boy doesn't show up, no one panics. Not at first. He's young. Maybe he overslept. Maybe he ran off with that flax-haired girl from the next village. What was her name? Brielle? You try not to smirk. But when old Tom, the steward, goes to check, he doesn't come back right away. Hours pass. Then Tom returns, face white as flour, mumbling that the boy is fevered, burning hot, skin soaked in sweat, and something else, a swelling on his neck. Big as a hen's egg, Tom says, fingers trembling. Black, angry. You already know. Everyone does, even if no one says it. The word plague is avoided like a curse, but its shadow is thick now. You feel it every time someone coughs, every time a dog whines, every time the wind carries that strange, sweet, sick smell of rot and damp wood and something else, something ancient. The boy dies before dawn. You hear his mother's scream through the frost-glazed shutters. It sounds like something being torn from inside a tree. And just like that, it begins. By week's end, 4 more are sick. A mother, 2 brothers, and the blacksmith's wife. The blacksmith keeps hammering, but slower now. His blows sound more like mourning than work. He doesn't speak anymore. You see him carry his wife's body to the pit himself, dirt frozen to her feet, like she refused to go. Your own family still seems fine, but every day that passes feels like a game of chance you didn't ask to play. You try to help where you can. You deliver food, you chop wood, you watch neighbors fall like frost-bitten apples. Some cough blood, some swell and blacken. Some simply go to sleep and never wake up. People try remedies. Father Thomas, before he passed, blessed the wells. The healer burned rosemary and sage in every home. Your mother insists you chew cloves and carry posies. It's the air, she says. Bad vapors. You try not to roll your eyes, but honestly, you'd eat a bucket of toads if she asked. Historians still argue over how people truly understood the plague back then. The miasma theory, the belief that disease came from poisonous air, was the prevailing explanation. Germ theory wouldn't arrive for hundreds of years, so people did what they could. Wore flowers, lit incense, sealed windows, held their breath. It didn't work. Your friend Tilda, who used to sneak you extra bread from the bakery, dies in her sleep. Her mother follows 2 days later. You pass their house and see both bodies lying on a wooden board in the yard. No one's come to take them yet, and the bell is still silent. The days blur. One morning, you find the smith's forge cold. The blacksmith is gone, just gone. Some say he walked into the woods. Others say he drank himself to death. The truth doesn't matter. He's another name whispered and then forgotten. Your dog runs off. He's smart, maybe smarter than you. He saw what was coming and didn't wait. You wish you could leave, but you stay because of your family, because your father still hums when he works, because your mother braids your sister's hair like nothing's changed, because your brother, your younger brother, is still healthy, still annoying, still alive, until he's not. It starts with a headache. He says it's nothing. Your mother presses cool cloths to his forehead. Then the fever comes. Then the cough. Then the swelling. It's under his arm, black as midnight, angry and hot. Your mother won't leave his side. She refuses to let your father take him to the plague house. If he dies, she says, he dies here, with us. Your father doesn't argue. He just sits near the hearth, sharpening his knife for no reason. Over and over. For 3 days, your brother burns. He calls out in fevered ramblings. Sometimes he laughs. Sometimes he screams. Once he asks for St. Roch to come sit by him. Once he asks for a pear, though it's the middle of winter. You want to leave the room, want to flee, but you don't. You sit near the wall, knees to your chest, watching, waiting, and then something strange happens. On the fourth morning, the fever breaks. He opens his eyes, blinks, whispers something about the fire being too warm. Your mother drops the cloth she was holding. Your father breathes out like he'd been holding his breath for days. And you, well, you just cry, quietly, because you don't want to jinx it. He doesn't die. Instead, the swelling softens. It ruptures. It drains. It smells terrible, but it's the best smell you've ever known. Your brother lives. No one knows why. It makes no sense. Others younger, stronger, have perished, but not him. Some say it's prayer. Others say it's luck. Your mother says it's God's mercy, though she can't quite look heavenward when she says it. Historians, centuries later, will uncover the truth. Well, part of it. They'll learn that certain people carry a rare genetic mutation called CCR5-Delta32, which makes it harder for the plague bacterium to take hold. Your brother may have it. Maybe you do too. But here in 1348, all you know is that something spared him. And that's enough. That night, your mother lights a candle and places it in the window. It's small. It flickers in the wind, but it glows. And for the first time in weeks, so do you. Your brother's breath comes easier now. The swelling has shrunk, though it left behind a ghastly bruise that stretches from his armpit to his ribs. It will scar. Your mother says so with strange pride, like it's proof of divine favor etched into flesh. You believe her for now, because you want to. He sits upright today, propped on linen-wrapped straw. Weak, yes, but speaking, eating, alive. Everyone calls it a miracle. You try not to flinch when your mother touches his brow and murmurs, "God's will." Her hands tremble. Her voice sounds rehearsed. You've heard her say it over sick animals, over miscarried babies, over the blacksmith's empty forge. But this time it feels personal, almost defiant. Still, no one knows what actually saved him. Garlic, your mother's whispered prayers, the wine-soaked cloth she dabbed on his lips. The truth is buried deeper, inside his cells, inside his blood, in the silent machinery of his body doing something no one can see or explain. Historians centuries from now will uncover the riddle piece by piece. A bacterium called Yersinia pestis, carried by fleas, riding rats hiding in grain sacks and ship hulls. And somewhere in your brother's body, a shield, a broken receptor protein known as CCR5-Delta32 that stops the infection from taking over. It's not strength. It's not holiness. It's not luck. It's a glitch, a microscopic accident of nature, a biological typo. And it just might have saved his life. You, of course, have no way to know any of that. What you do know is that the rest of the village isn't doing so well. The gravediggers are overwhelmed. The bell ringer is dead. The church doors are barred, nailed shut from the inside. Mass has stopped. Weddings are postponed. Funerals, when they happen, are hurried. Sometimes it's just a body, a prayer, and a hole in the ground. Some villagers stop praying altogether. Others won't stop. You pass one woman outside her cottage, kneeling in the snow, eyes closed and face lifted, muttering every saint's name she can recall, like it's a shopping list for mercy. She doesn't look up when you pass. People start noticing who lives. The gravedigger, he's still fine. He handles the dead. day in and day out, his hands black with soil and sin. But he hasn't coughed once. The midwife, too. She helps the sick, touches their skin, bathes their fevered bodies. Yet she's untouched. Witch, someone mutters about her one morning. God's chosen, says another. You don't say anything. You're too busy watching your brother try to stand, hands braced against the wall like a newborn calf. He stumbles, then steadies. He laughs. You cry a little. Again. People visit your family now, cautiously, curiously. They ask what you did, what herbs, what prayers, what sins you confessed. One old man offers your mother a chicken in exchange for the secret. She gives him a cup of broth instead. Whispers turn into questions. Why did he live? Why didn't theirs? And then come the unspoken ones. Why him and not my daughter? Why your family and not mine? Why do you get to be whole when the rest of us are only pieces now? Survivor's guilt. The name won't exist for centuries, but the feeling is old. You carry it now. Wear it like a second skin, itchy and invisible. You go to the well and avoid eye contact. You pull wood from the shed and stack it silently. Every cough you hear sounds louder. Every breath you take feels borrowed. That night, your brother asks the question no one's had the courage to say aloud. Why did I live? Your mother turns, eyes glistening in the firelight. God's will, she says again, but this time her voice breaks. You lie awake after they sleep. The cottage creaks with winter's fingers at the thatch. Your brother snores softly, scarred but breathing. And all you can think is this. If he was spared, what does that mean for the rest of you? Because death is not done. You feel it in the wind, in the silence where laughter used to live. You step outside. The sky is clear. Cold stars above. Somewhere a dog barks once. The village is smaller now, quieter. But you're still here. For better or worse, you're still here. Your brother gets stronger by the day. He walks to the edge of the field now, scar still healing, voice still raspy, but alive in a way that feels almost defiant. He even teases your sister again, an act so normal it feels like a rebellion. People still call it a miracle, but the shine is starting to dull. You start noticing the way they look at him. Not quite admiration, not quite suspicion, something in between, like he's part saint, part mystery, part riddle they're not sure they like. And who can blame them? Entire families have vanished, entire bloodlines turned to ash. Yet here he is, upright, and talking about rebuilding the chicken coop like the world hasn't cracked open. People have questions, and fear always seeks a reason. Why do some survive when others don't? Your mother says it's God. Your father just shrugs. But something gnaws at you, because deep down you suspect it isn't a blessing. Not exactly. It's something quieter, colder, something that shows without kindness. In your brother's blood, in his cells, in that secret language of flesh and chemistry, he carries a mutation. Not that you'd know to call it that, but someday, scientists will. The CR5-Delta32 mutation, to be precise. It affects a protein found on the surface of white blood cells. Normally, this protein acts like a door, one that certain invaders like Yersinia pestis use to break in. But in people with the Delta 32 mutation, that door is either missing or warped. The plague bacterium knocks, and no one answers. Modern science will discover that having 2 copies of this mutation gives you a high chance of resistance. 1 copy, partial defense. No copies. You're at the mercy of the rat, the flea, the bite, the cough, the wind. It's not courage. It's not prayer. It's molecular lockpicking, and your brother happened to be born with a better lock. You wonder if you have it too. There's no way to know. But you haven't gotten sick. Neither has your mother. Your family might all carry the same twist of fate, but the price of that luck is steep. You start noticing who else is still alive. The gravedigger, for one, a man who has touched more corpses than you've touched clean water. His face is gaunt, but not sickly. His eyes sharp, hands steady. And the midwife, quiet, calm, and unflinching. She walks into homes no one else dares approach. She emerges again and again, clean, breathing, alive. At first, people thank her, then they avoid her, then they whisper. The same story, repeated from village to village across Europe. Those who survive too well must be touched by something unnatural. In truth, the gravedigger and the midwife might carry the same genetic shield as your brother. Historians and scientists centuries from now will dig up bones, literally, and test DNA from plague-era cemeteries. They'll find the Delta 32 mutation in high concentration among survivors' descendants, especially in Northern Europe. But back in 1348, no one's mapping genomes. They're mapping rumors. One woman in a neighboring town survives after nursing her whole family. 6 children, husband, mother-in-law. Every one of them dies. She walks away without a cough. They call her a witch. She moves away in the night. Another man in the hills lives alone. They say he's immune. They also say he talks to birds and boils bones at full moon. Both might be true. He's left apples on your doorstep more than once. You've never dared ask why. Historians still argue whether survivor legends were embellished later or truly reflected how people coped with the unexplained. But even now, you see it clearly. Humans need reasons. When death is random, stories become shields. Your brother is recovering, but he's not the same. He stares longer at the fire. He flinches at sudden sounds. He touches the scar on his neck when he thinks no one's watching. Sometimes he asks questions. Do you think the fever made me different? Do you think I'll always feel cold? Do you think I'll get it again? You don't have answers. No one does. But something in him has changed. Not just in the blood, in the soul. As if some part of him stayed behind in the fever, and now he walks around slightly lighter, slightly less tethered. One day, a stranger arrives in the village, a monk traveling by foot. He wears a heavy cloak and a hood that hides most of his face. He says little, but he brings stories from elsewhere. He speaks of a woman in Florence who drank melted wax and survived. A boy in Avignon who lived after being buried overnight by mistake. A farmer in Hungary who buried 70 of his neighbors and never so much as sneezed. You listen, eyes wide, heart tight. Your brother just watches the fire. Maybe we're not cursed, he says softly later that night. Maybe we're just different. You nod. You don't know yet how much truth lives in that sentence, but you will. There's a stillness now, the kind that comes after too much noise, too many bells, too many burials, the kind of quiet that isn't peace. It's the aftermath. Your village feels hollow. Paths once bustling with carts and children are worn bare and eerily unused. Doors remain shut. Some houses stand abandoned, their chimneys cold and their windows gaping like open mouths. The plague hasn't vanished, but it has slowed. Or maybe it just ran out of people. Your brother walks without help now. The scar on his neck is a jagged purple line, thick and angry, but it's healing. He keeps it covered with a cloth as though it embarrasses him. like it says too much. But around town, the eyes that once looked at him with awe have changed. They still look, but not with reverence. Not anymore. Suspicion has replaced curiosity. At the well, a girl you've known since childhood won't meet your gaze. At the bakehouse, the new woman in charge hesitates before handing you bread. Your mother pretends not to notice. She thanks everyone twice, smiles too wide, holds your brother's hand just a second longer than necessary. You know what's happening. He lived, and they didn't. Survivor's guilt wraps its fingers around your throat. You begin to count the faces you'll never see again, not out of mourning anymore, but out of disbelief. Tilda, old Elric, the smith, Father Thomas, even the boy who used to throw mud at you during spring festivals. Gone, but you remain. And your brother, the one who didn't know when to stop talking, who once got stuck in the granary chasing a goose, is now an unexplainable living miracle, or something else. A few people call it what it is: luck. Others mutter darker things: unnatural, witch mark, touched. They look at your family like you're not entirely real, like you're too lucky, too healthy, too whole. You find yourself apologizing for being alive. You draw your cloak tighter when you walk past neighbors. You lower your voice. You leave food at the doors of the sick, but you don't knock. You want to help, but you also want to disappear. That's when your father stops you. "We're not hiding," he says. "We survived. That's nothing to be ashamed of." But he doesn't go to the market anymore. He sends you instead. You wonder if he believes his own words. Historians today talk about survivor identity, the strange duality of being both grateful and haunted. Entire communities across Europe lived with it after the Black Death. Some wore it like armor, others buried it deep, but all carried the same quiet question: why me? Your brother wakes screaming some nights. He never remembers what he dreamed. Your mother hums lullabies from when you were toddlers. She hasn't done that in years. There's a new routine now. The bell is silent, but time still moves. Bread is baked, firewood stacked, livestock tended. The mundane returns, though it feels somehow heavier. You find yourself doing small things just to feel normal. You sharpen tools that no one will use, sweep the doorstep of the abandoned neighbor's house, mend a cloak for someone who won't wear it. It's like setting the table for ghosts. And then, one morning, you wake to birdsong. Not a shriek, not a cough, not a bell. Birdsong. You sit up slowly, not daring to believe. The frost has begun to melt. The sun hits your roof in a new way. And suddenly, you remember what spring smells like. Your brother stirs. His eyes look clearer than they have in weeks. Outside, in the village square, two children chase each other around the well. They're laughing, real laughter, not the kind that hides grief. You step outside barefoot just to feel the dirt again. For a moment, you forget everything. But only for a moment, because when you go back inside, your mother is crying. Not loudly, not tragically, just silently, into the sleeve of her dress. You don't ask why. You know why. Because spring has come. And so has something else. The realization that this quiet isn't the end. It's the space between waves. And the next one might already be on its way. The story changes now. Not yours exactly, but one so close in spirit that you feel it in your bones. Because while your village survived by accident, another chose to die on purpose. The year is 1665. The place is Eam, a quiet English village nestled among the hills of Derbyshire. Nearly 300 years have passed since the Black Death first scoured Europe, but the plague, like a bad debt, has returned. You don't know I am yet, but one day its name will echo with meaning. It starts with a bundle of cloth, rich dyed fabric shipped from London, meant for a local tailor named Alexander Hadfield. When it arrives, it's damp. So his assistant, George Vickers, does what any rational man would do. He hangs the cloth by the fire to dry. That fire wakes the fleas. And within days, George Vickers is dead. Not sick, dead. The village whispers, then panics. They've seen the signs before. Swellings, fever, swift death. It's the plague. By the end of September, 5 are gone. Then more. The gravedigger can't keep pace. The rector and the former Puritan minister, William Mompesson and Thomas Stanley, realize something must be done. And what they suggest shocks everyone. Seal the village. No one leaves. No one enters. No trade. No travel. No escape. Quarantine. The villagers stare in disbelief. To stay is almost certain death. To flee is to save yourself, but risk spreading the disease to the neighboring towns, the county, perhaps the country. The people of Ayam vote, and they vote yes. Historians still marvel at it, an entire village choosing sacrifice. No soldiers, no orders, just ordinary people deciding to die so others might live. They set boundary stones around the village perimeter. Food and supplies are left at these markers by outsiders, paid for with coins soaked in vinegar. It's believed the vinegar disinfects the money. No one's sure it works, but they try anyway. That's the thing about this part of history. So much of it is trying, not knowing. Spring turns to summer, summer to autumn. The plague doesn't stop. Families vanish within a week. Some homes hold more corpses than living. Children die. Widows bury their husbands with shaking hands. Some, like Elizabeth Hancock, bury 6 children and a husband in 8 days, digging each grave herself. She never gets sick. Neither does the village grave digger, Marshall Howe, despite handling countless bodies, sometimes looting them first. Nor does Margaret Blackwell, who, feverish and delirious, drinks a pot of bacon fat thinking it's milk and survives. To modern ears, this all sounds impossible. But again, it may be biology. That same mutation your brother carries, CCR5 Delta 32, might be in them too. It doesn't make them invincible, but it does make them harder to kill. Of course, no one in AM knows that, so they invent other explanations. They say Elizabeth is a witch, that Marshall has made a pact, that Margaret was cured by bacon grease. And honestly, in desperate times, bacon is pretty magical, but stories turn to suspicion. Grief turns to madness. One man, locked in his home with his sick family, claws through the wooden door and flees, barefoot screaming. He's found dead days later in a meadow, alone. Others try to leave and are caught. Mary Cooper, desperate, makes it halfway to Sheffield before she's turned back. She survives, but lives with the shame of trying to run while her neighbors stayed. The ministers, Mompesson and Stanley, stay too. William's wife, Catherine, catches the plague while helping others and dies in his arms. He continues to preach outdoors from a rocky dell called Cooklet Church, where villagers can stand far apart in the open air. Early social distancing, no pews, no communion, just space, silence, and shared sorrow. After 14 months, the plague finally stops. Of the 800 souls in Ayam, only about 340 survive. Their sacrifice works. The plague stays within the village. Neighboring communities are spared. They saved thousands by staying still. There's no parade, no medals, just graves and memory. Centuries later, scientists will study the descendants of AM and find again that CCR5-Delta32 mutation, proof that survival wasn't just luck, it was inheritance, but more importantly, choice. Because while your brother lived because of something in his blood, the people of AM lived and died because of something in their bones. Courage. In a time when others ran, they stood still. As you sit by your fire that night, you wonder, would you have stayed? Would your family? The answer lies somewhere between hope and fear. But you hold your brother's hand a little tighter, just in case. The story of AM haunts you even across time, because it asks a question you still can't answer. What would you risk for people you'll never meet? Your brother's survival was an accident of birth, a twist in a helix no one could see. But the villagers of Ayam made a choice. They looked death in the face and said, "Let it be us." And something about that sticks with you. Like smoke in a room long after the fire's out, you find yourself walking to the old hill behind your village, the one where you used to sneak honey cakes and skip chores. From there, you can see everything, the cottages that still have people in them, and the ones that don't. You watch as a pair of travelers approach from the road, strangers. But before they reach the first house, someone shouts. They're told to turn back. "We're not ready yet," the voice says. The travelers leave. Your village hasn't sealed itself off like AM, but there's an invisible border now, a line between us and them. Trust comes slower, smiles are wary, and sometimes even you, especially you with your healthy family and scarred brother, aren't entirely inside the us circle. The mutation that saved him may have separated you all the same. Still, life stirs again. A new calf is born. A bakery reopens. Someone paints a door red, not plague red, just a bold cherry red. Because why not? It's a small act of defiance, of beauty. Your brother starts helping with the spring planting. He still limps, slightly, but he works beside your father with the quiet patience of someone who has learned to count hours like blessings. At night, he sits by the hearth and carves bits of wood. Not anything useful, just shapes. A bird, a twisted tree, a face you think might be his own. You don't ask. One morning, you overhear a conversation between your mother and a neighbor. The neighbor lowers her voice, but you catch the words, "Strong blood." It's not said with admiration, not exactly, more like fear dressed as flattery. That night, you bring it up to your mother. What do they mean? Strong blood. She doesn't look up from her stitching. They mean different. They always do. You let that hang in the air because you know she's right. Even centuries later, that phrase, "strong blood," will echo in dangerous ways. It will be twisted into ideas about superiority, about worth. Some will use the CCR5-Delta32 mutation to argue nonsense about purity, resilience, chosenness. But they'll be wrong, because surviving isn't a virtue. It's a variable. And death doesn't care about your genes. Historians still debate where the mutation came from. Some believe it evolved in response to earlier plagues, like smallpox or an even older virus. Others say it predated them all, quietly sitting in the population until the Black Death turned it into an advantage. But even now, no one agrees. Nature is messy. Survival is a gamble. The winners often don't even know they were playing. And you? You're trying not to let survival turn into guilt. Or worse, arrogance. You see it happening elsewhere. Stories drift in from other towns. People who lived start believing they were spared for a reason, that they're better, smarter, holier, more beloved by God. Some start acting like it, and others start resenting them for it. You don't want to be either. One evening, your brother tells a joke at supper, and your mother laughs. Really laughs, mouth open, eyes shining. It's the first time in months. You join in, though you don't even hear the punchline, just the sound of your family sounding like a family again. Afterward, you slip out to sit under the stars, and that's when you see it. A light, faint, flickering, far off across the field. A torch, perhaps. Then another. People traveling, maybe from the next village, maybe farther. They don't stop, just pass through like ghosts. And for a moment you wonder, do they carry it? Or do you? The plague is fading, but it's not gone. Not really. It never will be. Not entirely. Because it's not just in the body. It's in memory, in rituals changed, in words avoided, in the empty chair at the table. The world has cracked, and even if it heals, the scar will show. But scars are not just reminders of pain. They are proof of healing. You press your palm to your brother's old straw mattress and whisper, "Thank you," into the dark. Not to a god, not to luck, just to the moment. The fact of being here, now alive. You begin to notice things you missed before. The way the village leans a little more toward silence now, but a different kind of silence. Not the stunned hush of mourning, but something gentler, like reverence or exhaustion softened into stillness. You find a rhythm again. Wake with the crows, gather kindling, braid onions for drying, wash linens even though they're already clean. It's not about necessity anymore. It's about motion, about returning to the cycle of doing because you can, and because you're still here to do it. There's something sacred in sweeping a floor that once held footprints of the dead. Your brother returns to the woods with you, the same trail where the fever had first taken him, back when you were searching for berries. He walks slower now, always scanning the trees like they might remember. At one point, he stops. "Do you think the birds knew?" he asks. You tilt your head. Knew what? That people were dying. That the forest got quieter. You don't know what to say. But later, you'll read about it. How in cities like Florence and London, the rats got bolder, the animals more visible. The plague didn't just kill humans. It changed the soundscape. Historians still argue whether the silence was literal or imagined. But anyone who's lived through a mass death knows. The air gets heavier. The world sounds different when it's grieving. You both sit on a moss-covered log and say nothing for a long while. Later, as you walk back, you spot something strange. A tiny bundle tucked in the hollow of a tree, wrapped in fabric, tied with twine. You open it carefully. Inside is a charm. 2 feathers, a coin, a dried flower, and a tooth. You blink. Witchcraft, number, or maybe. Depends who you ask. You leave it alone. Because even if it's superstition, it's someone's hope. And hope deserves a place to rest, too. As spring turns warmer, strangers begin to pass through more often. Some come with news. The plague has burned through the port city and moved inland. Others claim it's gone entirely, snuffed out like a candle. You don't believe them. Neither does your mother, but the stories shift from fear to aftermath. A traveling tinker says the king has ordered days of fasting and prayer. Another man insists the Pope sent a letter blaming the Jews, the dancers, the wind, or maybe comets. You already know this pattern. People point fingers. They need a cause. You think back to that mutation, the one your brother carries, and wonder how many others like him are out there. Not because of sin or virtue, but chance. It's strange, isn't it? To realize that the thing that spared your family isn't a miracle, but an error in code, a deletion. It makes you want to hug him tighter and also cry, because humans aren't made for randomness. We're storytellers, not spreadsheets. And we keep trying to fold chaos into meaning. You find this is true when a nearby priest visits your village. He gathers the children to tell them a tale about angels guarding the good and demons punishing the wicked. The plague, he says, was a test. Only the righteous were left behind. Your brother hears this and walks away. Later, you find him splitting firewood. He looks calm, but the blade cuts deeper than necessary. He said Dad was righteous, he mutters. You don't say anything because you remember your father coughing. The way he gripped your hand so tightly, it left a bruise. You remember the last thing he whispered before he died. Tell your mother not to look. Righteousness had nothing to do with it. That night, you light a candle by the hearth and place a stone beside it. One for your father, one for each friend you've lost, one for the child who used to sing off-key at festival. You don't need names. The stones remember. In the cities, things are different. From what you hear, people burn incense in the streets and hold processions to ward off the return. Doctors wear bird-shaped masks stuffed with herbs. You picture them walking like dark shadows through alleys of sorrow, snouts filled with lavender and fear. It doesn't help, but it gives the illusion of control. And in the end, maybe that's enough. You begin to dream again. Not nightmares, just dreams. Sometimes you're in the woods running fast. Sometimes you're back at the well, laughing. And once, you dream of Am, though you've never seen it. And in the dream, the stones sing. You don't tell your mother, but your brother says he dreamed it too. Maybe memories pass through blood, he jokes. But the truth is, maybe they do. Or maybe grief teaches us the same language, no matter how far apart we are. Summer comes, the kind that hums with insects and hangs sweat-heavy on the back of your neck. And with it comes a strange new feeling, guilt for being happy. You catch yourself laughing too easily, walking barefoot too long, letting the sun warm your arms like it's something earned. And each time, some part of you flinches, waiting for punishment. But nothing comes. Instead, one morning, you wake to your brother singing, software off-key. But it's a song your father used to hum while shaving bark from branches. You don't interrupt. You just let the sound braid itself into the air like sunlight on water. Later that day, you visit the village square and see something else you haven't in months. A game. Children with hoops and sticks. Laughter that doesn't sound strained or borrowed from memory. You sit down under the old linden tree and watch without moving, not wanting to disturb the moment. And that's when an elder approaches you. He's quiet for a while before he speaks. You're the one with the brother, he says, not cruelly, just fact. You nod. They say he didn't die. You nod again. He squints into the sun. Must be strange, carrying a miracle. You smile, but only with your mouth, because you're not sure it is a miracle, and you don't want to be the keeper of it. Historians call this period Plague Tale, the final stretch where most of the dying has stopped, but the living don't know what to do with themselves. It's the part where old patterns feel too tight and new ones haven't settled yet. You start seeing changes everywhere. The tanner's son, who used to mock the apothecary's herbs, is now learning how to dry yarrow and willow bark. The blacksmith's daughter, who lost her betrothed, decides to wear his leather apron and take over his forge. Even your mother, once a woman of neat prayers and careful skirts, now sings when she cooks, loudly, badly, and without shame. The world, it seems, has rearranged itself. And yet, some things stay broken. At night, you still dream of eyes gone glassy, of breath rattling in chests, of hands too cold to hold. You still avoid walking past certain cottages. You still flinch when someone coughs too hard or sneezes without covering their face. Because memory doesn't follow the calendar, even when the market returns, and travelers come through with baskets of figs or silk or things you haven't seen in a year, like cinnamon, you find yourself overwhelmed, not with joy, but with suspicion. Your brother notices. You're waiting for it to happen again, he says. You don't deny it, because plague is like thunder after a flash. You know another crash is coming. You just don't know when. Back then, there were no vaccines, no cures, just prayers and guesses. And vinegar. Always vinegar. You hear a man in town say the plague was punishment from heaven. Another claims it was the work of devils. A third swears by astrology. Mars was in the wrong house. They're all wrong. But they're not stupid. People are just trying to put handles on the dark. You try to stay busy, but some days, busy isn't enough. One evening, you find your brother standing at the edge of the woods again, holding that little carved bird he's been shaping for weeks. I want to leave it, he says. Here, he nods. Why? He shrugs. For whoever needs it next. You watch him place the bird in the hollow of a tree, beside the old charm bundle. Then you both walk away. You don't speak about it, but that night you dream of a child, years from now, finding it, holding it, smiling, maybe surviving, maybe not. Historians still debate the final death toll. Some say the Black Death killed 25 million people. Others argue 50. A few push the number higher. There are entire regions with no records at all. But numbers don't matter when it's your father, or your friend, or the boy who stole your apple that one time and grinned like it was the best joke in the world. Grief doesn't scale, it settles, like dust in the corners of a house you're still afraid to clean. And yet, you wake, you wash, you laugh, you love. Eventually, without realizing it, you find yourself talking about your father without crying, about the days before the plague without bitterness. You remember joy the way you remember songs, imperfectly, but with warmth, and that's its own kind of miracle. By autumn, the harvest feels heavier than usual, not in size, but in meaning. You watch as villagers bend their backs to the fields, cutting wheat with solemnity, as if they're gathering not just grain, but memory. The ones who used to sing while they worked now move quieter, more measured. There's a kind of reverence to it, like a prayer made with your hands. Your brother threshes beside you, sleeves rolled high, forearms lined with golden chaff. His body stronger now than even before the fever, but you see the pauses. The way he glances at the tree line sometimes, lost in some thought he doesn't share. You don't ask, because you know. Everyone's carrying someone now, not literally, but inwardly. Every breath is a name unspoken, every smile a eulogy that no one hears. One day, The traveling merchant returns, the same one who passed through when the world was unraveling. He's older now, grayer, but still smiles with too many teeth and smells faintly of cloves and wine. He brings news. Venice has reopened, Paris too. The ships sail again, and he adds, quietly, that there's a rumor going around. Some people seem to never get sick. Entire households spared while neighbors fell. There's talk of special blood, he says. Blessed veins. You feel your spine straighten. He doesn't mention your brother, but his eyes linger just long enough. That night, you sit outside and watch the stars. Your mother joins you. For a while, neither of you speaks, just the chirping of late insects and the hush of grass. Then she says, "People will always search for patterns. It comforts them." You nod. "They'll call it strength," she continues, "or fate, or favor, but it's just chance." And then, after a pause, "Don't let anyone turn your brother into a prophecy." You look at her. Really look. The lines that deepened around her mouth this year. The way her hands twist her apron, not out of nerves, but because she's bracing for something. What if they already have, you ask? She doesn't answer, but you both know it's already begun. The next week, a visitor arrives. Not a merchant, not a priest. A scribe from the city. He asks to speak to families who weathered the plague exceptionally. He says he's collecting stories for the university. For the record, your mother agrees, reluctantly. He sits at your table, smiles politely, takes notes with fingers too clean for someone who's seen death. Your brother tells the story plainly, the fever, the pain, the fire in his throat, the way he could smell death in the walls. And how, after a week of dreams he can't remember, he woke up to his own body again. The scribe leans forward. "And you've felt no effects since?" "No," your brother says, "except I don't dream the same." The scribe blinks. You chime in, trying to deflect. "He carves now." "Carves?" You fetch the bird from the shelf, the little wooden figure he left in the woods. He made another, this one more detailed, the grain smoother, the wings spread wider. The scribe holds it gently, and then he says, "This will make a fine emblem." You bristle. It's not an emblem, it's just a bird. But you know how stories work. They start with truth. Then truth gets lonely, so it invites meaning. And meaning invites metaphor. Before long, a fever becomes a trial. A survival becomes a symbol. A boy becomes a myth. You think of Ayam, how centuries later people will visit that village and lay flowers at unmarked graves. How some will romanticize it, turn the sacrifice into spectacle. They'll forget about the screaming, the shallow burials, the children sobbing behind shuttered windows. The scribe leaves the next day, and with him goes your peace, because you know his words will live longer than your voice. And you wonder, will he write it right? Or will he make your brother something he never asked to be? That night, your brother finds you by the fire. "Do you think I'm different?" he asks. You hesitate. "Yes," you say, "but not because of your blood." "Why then?" "Because you stayed." He doesn't reply, just reaches into his pocket and pulls out something new. Another carving. This one is you. You blink. "I've been working on it a while," he mutters, suddenly bashful. "It's not finished." You take it gently. The figure is rougher, smaller, but the posture is unmistakable. 1 foot forward, arms steady, chin raised. You laugh softly. "I look taller in wood." "You walk tall," he says. "Even when you're tired, you hold the carving to your chest." And in that moment, the story is simple again. Not about survival or mutation or history, just siblings. in a house that still stands, with hands that still shape the world. The seasons shift again, and with them, the story of your village begins to leak outward. Travelers speak of it in half whispers. That place up north, the one with the boy who never died. Something in the well water, maybe. His blood cured the fever, they say. You hear these things at the market from people who don't know you're listening, and then you hear your name, just a sentence tossed casually like a kernel into a field. His sister kept him alive. You freeze, not because it's true or false, but because it's neat. And nothing about what happened was neat. Historians still argue about the role of women during the plague. How many were caregivers? How many buried the dead? How many were blamed as witches? But in the record books, you'll find more about death tolls than daily tenderness, more about kings than kitchens. You wonder if your name will disappear too. Then again, maybe that's okay. Maybe it's enough that you know, that your brother knows, that your mother, your neighbors, the chickens, the trees, they remember. Still, the stories twist. One morning, a boy from a neighboring town arrives at your door, barefoot and blinking. "My sister's sick," he says. "They told me you could help." You let him in. Feed him soup. Try not to look panicked as you prepare a bundle of herbs and instructions. You are not a healer, but you've watched enough healing, carried enough water, listened to enough wheezing breaths to know what not to do. And maybe that's something. You send him back with the bundle and a kiss pressed into his palm, like your mother used to do when you were small. Later, your brother teases, "You've become the village witch." You grin, "Only if you help me grow warts." But the truth stings a little, because you've seen where these stories go. One minute, you're wise. The next, dangerous. Revered or feared, depending on the moon. You start keeping track of the whispers, not the words, but the tone. And one day, you hear it in your own village. Someone mutters too loudly that they don't get sick. "Those ones." Someone else replies, "Maybe they brought it then." It coils in your stomach like a worm. You talk to your mother, she sighs. We forget how to be grateful. Fear is easier, so you begin writing things down, not for the world, not for the scribe in the city, just for yourself. You record the names of the dead, the date of the first fever, the taste of the soup you made the night your brother broke his fever, the way your hands shook the first time you laughed again. You write in the margins too, little things, like, "The cows returned to grazing today. I danced a little in the pantry when no one was looking. I miss my father's shadow. No one else sees it. Not yet." One evening, your brother shows you a new carving. This one is strange. Two faces on the same body. One is laughing, the other is crying. "What is it?" you ask. He shrugs. "Survivor." You sit with that word a while. It doesn't feel like a crown or a badge. It feels like a scar under a shirt, always there, but not always seen. There's a story they'll write about you and your brother one day. But it won't be the full one. Because how do you write about the quiet dread of folding a blanket that once belonged to someone who isn't here? How do you describe the smell of fear when it's clinging to your skin? Or the sound of your own heartbeat the night the coughing started? You can't. So you write this instead. We lived. And in smaller letters beneath it, sometimes we laughed too. You think that's enough. The first frost of the year comes quietly. You wake to find the windows laced in silver, the well rope stiff, the chickens confused and puffed like tiny round ghosts. It's beautiful, in a sharp, cruel kind of way. Your brother runs outside barefoot and yelps. You laugh. It's a real laugh, unforced, loud enough to startle the crows from the barn roof. And just like that, you realize you're not afraid of winter anymore, not the way you were last year. Last year, winter meant death. It meant cold breath and colder bodies, and the slow crunch of grief hardening like ice. But this year, it's different. This year, you're alive. The village prepares for winter as it always has. But the preparations carry a quiet stubbornness now, like everyone is saying with their hands what they're too tired to say aloud. We're still here. You help the blacksmith's daughter repair tools. You hang onions to dry in the attic. You bring soup to the old widow who talks too much but whose hands shake less when you sit with her. The day before the solstice, your brother hands you something. A notebook. Your notebook. He's stitched it into a new cover, soft leather, dyed a deep red. I thought it should last, he says. You run your fingers over it. The pages are worn from your writing, a few smudged from tears, one corner stained from when you spilled broth during a storm. You hold it like it's fragile, like it might still burn if you let it. Later that evening, he says, "You should read it aloud sometime." Why? He shrugs. Because some stories shouldn't stay buried. And you understand what he means. Not just the story of what happened, but how it felt. That's what gets lost, isn't it? Historians remember numbers. They debate causes. They trace maps and trace bloodlines. But they forget how the world smelled when the wind blew through empty streets. They forget what silence sounds like when it lasts too long. You think of Aom again, the village that locked itself down to stop the plague from spreading. Some say they saved thousands. Others say the plague would have burned out anyway. Historians still argue, but no one argues about the grief, or the courage, or the way the children must have missed the sound of laughter. That's what matters. You spend the solstice inside, candles lit, stories told. Your mother hums while peeling apples. Your brother carves something new. You sit beside the hearth and write another entry. This one short. There is peace today. Not perfect, but enough. Afterward, you step outside. The snow has begun to fall, not in sheets, but in lazy drifts that tumble like ash from the clouds. You breathe in. The air is sharp, alive. You feel the cold on your teeth. And, for the first time in months, you feel the future arriving, not as a shadow, but as a possibility, a maybe. The stars blink above you like someone trying to remember your name. And for once, you don't feel small beneath them. You feel part of it, this story, this world, this strange, broken, breathing place. You whisper, "We're still here." The trees don't answer, but they don't need to. Because the wind carries it, because the snow remembers it, because you've written it down, and because somewhere, someone, years from now, might read your words by candlelight and understand, not the facts, not the dates, but the heartbeat between them, the thing that made you human when the world felt like it was ending. And that's enough. That's always been enough. By the time spring peeks over the horizon, the village no longer resembles the one you grew up in. New fences mark new gardens. Old paths are overgrown, while others, worn smooth by cautious feet during quarantine, become the new main roads. People build not because they forget, but because they remember what still needs shelter. And quietly, everywhere, women are running things. Not just the homes, though of course that's still true, but the smithy, the grain ledger, the herbal stalls, even the little voting square where elders gather to argue about water rights. The plague took many men. And the women who survived, they didn't wait for permission. No one seems brave enough to tell them to stop. Your friend Lena, once the shy midwife's apprentice, now instructs 3 men in making salves for infected wounds. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't have to. Authority wraps around her like her shawl. You spot her one day arguing with the baker about price gouging. He tries to talk over her. She doesn't blink. In the end, he agrees to fairer prices. You grin as you pass. Historians sometimes say the plague disrupted feudal order, that it gave peasants leverage, forced wages to rise, forced landowners to bargain. It's not wrong, but it's also not the full story, because the real shift wasn't just economic, it was personal. People started asking different questions, not just who owns this, but why should they? Not just what did we lose, but what are we no longer willing to tolerate? Your brother has joined a group of builders working on a new chapel. This one open air with no steeple. The priest who once called every illness a punishment now says little. Instead, he brings stones and labor and silence. Sometimes healing doesn't need sermons, just hands. You keep writing. By now, your pages spill beyond the little leather book. You stitch others. Hide them beneath floorboards, tuck them behind hearthstones, not because you fear theft, but because stories deserve to survive plagues too. One afternoon, a child stops you near the square. She's maybe 7, missing 2 front teeth, holding a piece of bread and a wooden doll missing an arm. "Are you the sister?" she asks. You blink. "I'm a sister." "No," she insists. "The sister, the one with the notebook." You pause, smile. "I guess I am." She nods like that, answers something big, and wanders off. And you realize people are still telling stories, not the ones in your pages, not yet, but the ones whispered from mother to child, carved into wood, hummed into dough. Your brother says the world feels warmer now, not just in temperature, but in spirit. He says that's ridiculous. Then he laughs. Then he plants another row of beans. The truth is, you'll never know why you survived. You'll never know why your brother's body resisted what others could not. You'll never know why you were spared when so many were not. But you do know what you're here for. To witness, to soften, to stitch memory into time like thread through cloth, to remind the world, gently, firmly, that it has broken before and rebuilt anyway. That night, you sit under the linden tree, the one that's still standing, the one where you once watched children play, and where grief once leaned its heavy shoulder against your own. You watch the stars blink awake. One by one, you breathe. In, out, no fever, no fear, just the cool air, and the sound of your brother carving beside you, and the distant sound of someone's dog refusing to be quiet. And you think, we didn't just survive the plague, we survived the silence after. We survived the forgetting. And now it's time to rest. Let's wind down together. Let your shoulders relax now. Let your hands unfurl from whatever they've been holding. Imaginary scythes, invisible spoons, the soft weight of memory itself. It's over. The panic, the wondering, the waiting for the next shoe to fall. For tonight, at least, you don't have to carry it anymore. Feel the weight melt into the mattress or blanket or whatever surface you trust to hold you. Breathe softly, slowly, like someone walking barefoot through a field at dawn. There's no smoke on the air now, No coughing from behind thin walls, just the hush of quiet lives rebuilding, one brick at a time. Maybe your mind still wants to worry. That's okay. Just nod at the worry. Let it pass like a bird too tired to land. You've done enough. More than enough. And, like the sister in the story, you're allowed to close the notebook, to put down the candle, to fall back into the kind of sleep that doesn't need to prepare for another goodbye. The world has cracked before, and still, it sings. You don't need to be the hero. You just need to be here, still, gentle, present, like breath in cold air, like morning after a long winter, like a name whispered back by time itself. Sleep well now. You've earned it.